January 18th, 2022. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Member Luger, Member Onstead, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. Tonight, we have PAC number 142 that will help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you guys would like to come on up. Ready, gentlemen? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good job. I would like to say thank you to PAC number 142 that came in early today to this evening to find out more about the role of government. And I will have to say they asked the most amazing questions, so very engaged. So we really appreciate that and the respect that you've shown us. So thank you very much. We will move on to open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are on or not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You may be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from any use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. Do we have anybody here tonight for open forum? Please come on up, state your name. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I want to make sure you have that. My name is Neil Gatso. I live at 5481 East Viking Boulevard. And I want to petition the mayor and the city council to consider, and I've got a handout for you. I'll kind of go through it, but I hope you'll have had a chance to take a look at it. My house, 5481 East Viking Boulevard, was built in 1904 by Charles Waldron and his family. My family bought this property and moved in January 2nd, 1978. It is one of the 4 or 5 oldest homes in the city. Property information. The size of my lot, the age, style, and placement of my house on the lot make it unique in the city of Wyoming. When sewer was initially installed, this property was assigned 2 sewer hookups, which meant that they felt that a second lot could be found on that property. However, after, you'll see on the map there's a wedge-shaped piece between me and the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church asked me to give them a piece of property so that they were able to square up their lot, and it was going to help them put in their parking lot when they were building their church. I sold that quitclaim deed for $1, and that allowed them to put in their parking lot. The question is, does 5481 East Viking contain 2 lots as currently configured? I have spoke to our building inspector. He and I have difference of opinion. You're looking at his drawing. On that drawing, it shows, in his estimate, 2 different lots. Now, I'm quoting actually from the ordinance. It says the side yard regulations, there shall be a minimum interior side yard setback of not less than 1/2 the height of the building. The height of my house is 16 feet as judged by the building inspector. My side yard setback is 8 feet. On the property between myself and the Methodist Church, 8 feet separated from the edge of my property would only leave 92 feet of frontage and not enough to create a second lot. The other lot shown on that drawing, you could come up with 100 feet of frontage, but the line actually would would touch my back steps and separate my garage from my house. And I wouldn't be able to get out my back door. So I don't think that there's a lot on the other side of my house as well. The lot width requirement says every lot or parcel of land shall have a minimum width at the building setback line and front footage of at least 100 feet. I don't think that's met in this. I'm going to read architectural standards too, because I think it does apply to my house. New homes shall be located and sited to preserve the sense of open space in the city and be visibly compatible in its character and scale with existing residential buildings. Where my home is situated on the property, no reasonable lot split would create a 100-foot frontage and meet architectural standards. Based on the lot size, should I be assessed for 2 lots? If my home were destroyed by fire or tornado, yes, there would be 2 lots. However, with my house lasting for 118 years and in very good condition, the answer as to the value of the house and land currently is more than the combined value of 2 lots. My assessed value in 2022 is property is for $263,500. I had someone researching individual lots in the city. None of them in my part of the city have been sold as individual lots. But even lots in some of the more expensive neighborhoods, if you will, wouldn't be appropriate to take down my house and come up with 2 lesser paying lots. So I don't think that tearing down my house to create 2 lots actually would make a fiscal sense for anybody buying my property. Because of the unique aspects of my home and property, I do not believe that a decision by the city council would cause a precedent that would affect other assessed properties. I don't believe you're creating a precedent. And I've talked to Mr. Wick, and he had said, you need to speak to the city council. I know that his job is to maximize what he can, and the planning commission also has to follow everything that's laid out in black and white before him. I also know from experience that the city council is to take a look at individual situations and decide what you believe is right for the community and for the individual property owner. I'm asking you to assign me 1 housing unit, if you will, for the property or for the road project.
Thank you, Mr. Getzel. Appreciate you coming up and speaking to us. And as you know, as a previous mayor, open forum, we can't make any decisions here tonight. I do know that staff has looked into this. We can have continued discussions on that. As in the past, and this is something that our council has done over the last 5 years, is we have set policies and procedures. So each council member can say what they'd like, but I do believe that this is something that should come, as in previous properties that have asked for this, to come after the project is done. And then there's that 30-day appeal process. And I think that will be the best time for this to come, because that's what we've done in the past in the city for other properties that have had that have asked for the same thing. So I will let council ask any questions, or and we'll start with Member Lugar.
I appreciate the diligence that went into this. I personally would like more time to review it and reflect and do some mulling. And so it sounds like that opportunity to appeal it might be a good.
Can you speak on the microphone? Is our mic on?
Sorry, I didn't turn on my microphone. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate the time and energy that went into this, and I'd like more time to think about the statistics and the information that you have in this. And so it sounds like we'll have an opportunity for that forthcoming.
Okay. Member Onstad?
I too was looking at this and just seeing the layout and looking at the feasibility of the possibility of putting another house on there if it would fit and if it would follow the city guidelines. And I think you present a very compelling argument for that. So I want to look more deeply into this too, to make sure that we come up with something that's fair for you and fair for the rest of the residents.
Okay, and Member Yeager.
Looking at this, is there a way of subdividing this without tearing the house down?
The property line I'm coming in on the west side is approximately 8 feet away from this house. We put the property line there, and that would be a 100-foot lot. The minimum requirements. I guess regardless, I could have put the line down the center of his house and show that he had enough frontage, and that would have met the assessment policy.
Yeah, I mean, I understood you could put the line down in front of his house and he has 2 lots there, but is it?
With that west line, you could, on the treat side of it, if they were to put a property line there, you could meet setbacks with the existing house and still have a legal lot on the west side of the property.
On the west, in answer to Mr. Weck's question, on the west side of my house, adding 8 feet, it measures 100 feet to literally the side of my house from the west property line at Methodist Church. If you give me a side yard setback of 8 feet, it's only 92 feet at my house. And I would not be in compliance if I tried to draw a line like that, if I was trying to do this.
The line is at 100 feet, and the house is 8 feet away from that. Unless I'm looking at the wrong, I don't have it in front of me, and my computer's not bringing up my own
Yeah.
drawing.
Do you have another map to give him?
Well, what I'd still like to do, Mr. Gatso, is this does really need to go, the process really does need to go at the appeal process at the end of the project.
I honestly thought that doing it now was probably more appropriate than waiting till the end to do it at that time. But no, I'll accept that that could be done later. And if you have any questions after this, I'd be happy to show you my lot, show you where. But if you look at the lines
I'm
that.
sorry, I misspoke. It was the east side.
Oh,
There it is. No. Okay, so.
I do have one more question,
Sure.
Madam Mayor. I see outbuildings on the west, on the, just at the west property line. What are those?
Well, that's a gardening shed. The property line as you see it is literally under the drip line of my house.
Okay. And if you were to subdivided, that gardening shed would have to be torn down?
Yes, and then my house wouldn't be in compliance with the 8-foot side yard setback that's required.
Oh, I do have my concerns about the feasibility of tearing down a house and a shed and a garage just to make 2 lots.
So again, with council, I would like to, are we all in agreement that this should come back as we think more? Talk to Mr. Weck on this as well. I think we all know that things change and Mr. Getzow, you might move someday or whatever, and somebody can buy your property and tear down your house or move the garage or whatever. So we're always looking into that future, right? Into that future portion. So, Mr. Linwood, would you be able to put this somewhere on the calendar to make sure that we have more discussion on this
Right.
and at the appeal process?
You certainly can, and I think in regards to when that assessment hearing comes up, I think staff can do the due diligence in regards to the precedent that's been done in prior projects with similar factors as Mr. Gatzow has stated, so we can show the precedents and the policy that the city council's used since 2009 for projects, and then anything that even the township has used a similar process, whether there's houses, structures, trees, whatever it may be, and the precedent's been completed. So we can put that together, and at that time, Mr. Gatzow will be notified of that assessment hearing and have the ability to bring that up again, and council can, at that time, make a decision on an appeal for Mr. Gatzow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Getzow. We really appreciate it.
Council, thank you, Mayor.
Is there anybody else here for open forum? If not, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Number 1 on our agenda, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for January 4th, 2022. If there are no questions or comments, we do need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion approved, first motion approved by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second motion by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. We have a scheduled public hearing before we get to number 2. So we do you want to do your presentation first and then go into the public hearing?
Madam Mayor, if I could, that would be great.
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful.
Perfect.
So Mr. Linwood will be pulling that up and sharing that on the TV screens here. So just bear with us just for one moment. All right, so this evening is the public hearing for the 2022 East Viking Boulevard Improvement Project. Have a presentation that mirrors the same presentation that we shared with the property owners at the 3rd informational meeting. And so bear with me if it sounds repetitive, but oftentimes there's individuals that can't make the informational meetings, but that do show up here. And so we'll go through it in its entirety, and I'll try to go as quickly as I can. But if there's more detail that anybody requests to see, just feel free to reach out, and we'll spend a little bit more time on those topics, and you have certainly the opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. Next slide, Mr. Linwood. Again, project location, you can see the portion that's highlighted in red is the street reconstruction project that extends from Fenwick Avenue to Glen Oak Drive. And then the reclamation portion of the project on East Viking extending from Glen Oak all the way out to Polaris's West Gate. That is the scope of the overall project that we're looking at this evening. Next slide. Project schedule, you can see the feasibility study was ordered in August of 2021. We've done a lot of data collection, preliminary design, working on grant applications. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this thus far. We've held 3 informational meetings, and back in December, the City Council did receive that feasibility study and ultimately set that public hearing for this evening. So this evening, you can see January 18th, we have the public hearing. If the council is inclined to move forward with the project this evening, we would likely move forward with plans and specifications, getting those authorized for bidding in April. Now, there's a lot of things that are coming into play here, right, with the grant application. So I just want to preface that. You can see the note at the bottom, really. The schedule is dependent on a lot of factors that are outside of the city's control, but that's really about the fastest that we can move forward. So a lot of things have to happen correctly for us to hit that schedule, so it may get slid back a little bit. We're looking at opening bids in June, starting construction in July, and we do have enough time to complete this project in its current scope to accommodate this construction season. Next slide. Again, a little bit more background. August 4th, we were authorized to proceed with a feasibility study. A little more background, late 80s, East Viking Boulevard was reconstructed by Chisago County. The surface condition of the roadway continues to deteriorate, requires a lot of public works maintenance staff time on the entirety of this stretch. And the roadway is well beyond its life cycle of 20 years. Our design moving forward, we're looking at a 30-year design, and so we certainly are confident that we have a well-planned and thoughtful project that will sustain a greater lifespan than what it has to date. Sanitary sewer and storm sewer removal and replacement were found. Sorry, so sanitary sewer and storm sewer, there are segments that require removal and replacement as a number of areas were found deficient. Existing conditions, just some photos here of the existing conditions, and you can see, probably not as well as in person, but you can see there's a lot of issues with the roadway, a lot of settlements, the curbs along the roadway. If you drive, they look fine. If you get out and walk, you can see there's a lot of issues with the curb and gutter along that corridor as well, and drainage issues and things of that nature that we want to correct with it that will help the longevity of the roadway. Next slide. Again, this is Glen Oak to Polaris. This section, you can see there's a lot of transverse and longitudinal cracking. We really want to address this roadway here now as well before it gets to a point where it might require reconstruction of that rather than a lesser expensive option like a reclamation type project. So the proposed roadway improvements from Fenwick to Glen Oak Drive really consist of replacing deficient storm sewer pipe and structures, extending storm sewer to meet drainage design standards by MnDOT. This is a state aid roadway, and so we have certain standards that we need to meet. We're looking at replacing deficient sanitary sewer pipe and structures. This is primarily in the sag area of the roadway where the wetland is on the north side. That roadway had settled, the sanitary sewer settled with it, and so there's some issues there that we need to address. With this project, we're looking at new sanitary sewer chimney seals just to prevent inflow and I&I into the sanitary sewer structures themselves, and then looking at some hydrant adjustments along this corridor as well. Next slide. Again, continuing on with this section of roadway, the proposed improvements, we're looking at new aggregate base. It might be recycled with the existing. It might be able to recycle and use the material that's on site as long as it meets specifications. New concrete curb and gutter, replacing the existing sidewalks and extending new sidewalks on the north side. New bituminous pavement. Again, it meets MnDOT design criteria with heavy traffic loading, so we have evaluated that. I know that was some questions from property owners in the past, and so we have designed that to meet those requirements, and that will be reviewed and approved by MnDOT. Be new pavement markings and turf restoration along with all the other improvements. Next slide. Again, we had a number of informational meetings with property owners to discuss really the scope of the project and what the project would look like once we were completed. And so there was a number of options where it included parking, it didn't include parking. The option that we heard from residents most favorably was to include and leave parking remain. And so we've decided to do that. And we've also talked about replacing the sidewalk on the south side and replacing the sidewalk that exists on the north side as well, but then extending that sidewalk further to the east. And I'll highlight, we did have another question from a property owner about extending sidewalk or trail even further to the east into the reclamation type improvement project. I'm not sure, that resident is here this evening as well. And so remind me if I forget, but we'll highlight a little bit more on our findings of that as well. And so we did want to look into that. Next slide. Glen Oak to Polaris. This is really a little bit easier project, certainly a lot less expensive. It's one where we grind up the asphalt with the underlying aggregate. It builds that road base, that strength of the roadway, and then we simply place new asphalt. And so the lots are larger, but the costs are significantly less, and the assessments ultimately are a little bit less as well, even though the lots are significantly larger. So the roadway widths do vary in this segment. We will maintain two 12-foot drive lanes throughout and have shouldering. It might be a little wider in some areas, but we want to minimize how much extra work we have to do with the inslopes of roadways. And so we might narrow slightly, but in all cases, we will be at minimum of two 12-foot drive lanes. Proposed improvements along this segment also include some addition of hydrants. Public Works staff has difficulty maintaining water quality in that area, and so this will allow us to do a little bit better job with the flushing in cleaning out of that line. This section, again, I did highlight a little bit. It's hard to see, but we are maintaining the 12-foot drive lanes, and there may be some wider areas there as well that we can accommodate in the interim moving forward. Neighborhood input, we always ask for neighborhood input, and we continue to seek it. If we hear additional comments, we'll take notes and make sure we follow up with property owners and try to incorporate, but those typically consist of drainage issues, maybe where there's some pump discharges too. We want to make sure that we can accommodate picking that up and put it into our storm sewer. Street widths, parking lanes, we've discussed a lot of these things, pedestrian facilities, traffic and traffic volumes, all those have been discussed at length. Next slide. Continuing on, we typically hear a lot from property owners about tree impacts, and so we'll be cognizant of that, and we'll work closely with property owners as we finalize design if the council is inclined to move that direction. We'll definitely have in close meetings with property owners that we feel there may be impacts that they want to be aware of, and we'll go through and discuss those. Driveway access is also a concern. We'll make sure that we maintain access to property owners. It may be limited at times, such as when they're immediately in front of your driveway, or if there's concrete being placed. There'll need to be cure time on that before property owners can gain access, but all those things are communicated well in advance with property owners. Heated driveways, heated concrete walks, things of that nature, if they exist, we want to know about it because there's little different types of construction methods that we'll need to accommodate with that. Irrigation systems, fences in the right-of-way, pet fencing, mail delivery and waste hauling services, those will all be communicated with property owners in advance. But certainly if you have irrigation systems or pet fencing, we want to know about that as soon as we can. Project funding is consistent with our city assessment policy. So our city assessment policy requires that we assess 20% of the project improvements for both surface and drainage. So really the street portion and the drainage portion of the improvements. That does not include the sanitary sewer, the water main improvements that I mentioned, or the sidewalk extension. Those are not assessable, so we're just specifically referring to the street and the storm sewer, the drainage aspects of the project. And again, I mentioned they are consistent with the city's assessment policy that does identify a unit rate rather than a front footage rate. And so a number of communities look at different methodologies, and the city's assessment policy here is that we base it on a unit. So meaning you have one property that's not further subdivided, you would only receive one assessment based on your frontage. Not based on your frontage, but actually based on the ability of either one lot or potentially being subdivided, you'd receive multiple assessments. And then the city pays the remaining portion of the improvement project cost. There's a couple different segments. We look at them to try to spread them uniformly based on type of improvement. And this is the reconstruction portion of the project. This is the highlighted in blue are the properties that are identified as being adjacent to the improvements. And we have a total of 53.5 units that are identified there, 53.5 accessible units. So with the total drainage and street improvement costs at 1.87 million, we multiply that by that 20% to yield a total accessible amount of $374,073. Divided by that 53.5 units, we end up with an assessment amount of $6,992.02. Again, this is an estimate at this stage right now. We're doing our best to really manage what we expect construction costs to be next year. We do think they're going to be a little bit higher than what we've seen last year based on some preliminary feedback. We're trying to accommodate and account for that. But again, we also are conservative in our estimates. We feel we have some unknowns at this point. We tend to err on the side of being a little bit more expensive so that we don't come in with surprises at a later date. So moving on to the next segment, in the next slide there, we look at the segment that is a reclamation type improvement. And that total project cost, although it's longer, it is substantially less in cost. And the cost there is 1.57 million roughly. And again, that 20% of that yields $313,669 as accessible, divided by a total of 59.5 units, yields an assessment amount of $5,271.74. Again, that's a preliminary estimate. Assessments are based on actual costs and determined prior to the assessment hearing that would occur in November. Again, the assessment process does follow state statutes, chapter 429. It is very detailed and outlines a number of required meetings. This is one of those. The assessment hearing is another. The city finds that our projects are much more successful when we engage the public and get feedback, and so we've had 3 informational meetings thus far, and we certainly appreciate that feedback, and we know we end up with a better project when we do that. A little bit more about that 429 process at that assessment hearing. If you're inclined to appeal that assessment, that appeal must be in writing and presented to the city prior to or at the hearing. And the notice of appeal with Chisago County Courts, in this case, must be filed within 30 days after the adoption of the assessment. And the interest rate is set at the time of the certification. And so that typically has been in that 4 to 5% range, typically 4.5, I think is what we've seen most recently. Next slide. Again, assessments are proposed in this case to be paid over a 15-year period. Council will ultimately decide that, but that is generally in line with what we've had for assessments in this range, this dollar amount. And again, the interest rate, I mentioned earlier, ranges in that 4 to 5% range. I think I've highlighted item number 1, that there's a way to prepay those assessments to avoid interest within 30 days after the adoption of the assessments, or they would be automatically applied to your property taxes if you were not to prepay those. Next slide. This really highlights that 429 process and really where we're at in the process. You can see we're holding that informational meeting that's kind of midway on, or I'm sorry, the public hearing, midway on the right. You can see holding the public hearing. We've had a number of steps to continue to move on through the process if the council's inclined to move forward this evening. But again, just to highlight that there is a detailed process that we're required to follow when we have assessments to benefiting properties. So before I move on to any questions, I just want to highlight that we've talked about the project in its entirety. There is a segment that does include a bridge, and that's over the Sunrise River, and we do intend on moving forward with that project as well. It likely will be bid with this project in aggregate. However, we currently do not have funding for the project in its entirety right now, so we are looking for funds, and we've applied for a grant through the federal EDA. And so I will just preface that tonight we are asking the council to consider ordering the project and authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, but providing that if we do not get the grant dollars, there might be the opportunity that we don't move forward with that second phase of the project, meaning the reclamation portion east of Glen Oak. That's a potential that portion doesn't get constructed this year, with the exception that the bridge would anticipate to move forward in any case. We have received a number of funds, bridge bond funds for that portion of the project.
Mr. Erickson, the paved sidewalk portion?
Yes, thank you. I just remembered that as well. So we have evaluated that at a very high level, I will say. So we've looked at that. It would involve a fair amount of property acquisition, so we don't have the ability to do that without acquiring additional property. There's not public right-of-way that we have within that corridor. So there are a couple of minor exceptions. There are some right-of-way segments that we do have, but most of it does not. And so it would include right-of-way. The cost would be pretty substantial at this point. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not minimal. It happens to be a rural section roadway where we have at the edge of the roadway in slopes and ditches and things of that nature. So we would need to look at that and vet that a little bit further, but it would be relatively expensive. I know that we are working on an overall plan with Candace from our office regarding the overall community network of pedestrian facilities and parks and things of that nature. That's not to say we couldn't incorporate in this project. We would need to get direction from council to study and vet that a little bit further, but we know that it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars, particularly even with the right-of-way. The right-of-way has the potential to be relatively significant there as well, with trees and clearing and grubbing. And we could also look at on-street facilities as well, but I think from what we've heard, we would like to see separated trails, but we'd like to get a little bit more direction on that before we move much further, but know that we are also looking at that in I guess more of a broad brush with Candace in our office and the study that she's currently working on. A project like that could be added on to this at a later date as well,
Okay.
whether it's with this project or a separate project.
Okay, and we could look at grant dollars possibly with that, and then do we want to look at the comp plan? Because I know Planning Commission is working on that. So would the comp plan come into that as well as we look at what we might want to do into that land?
It certainly could. I know the current grant that we're pursuing does not allow for reimbursement for these types of facilities, these trail or pedestrian facilities. There are other grant opportunities that we could certainly look into, more for trails than for sidewalks, but we can certainly look at that a little bit further as well.
Okay, do you want to take questions from council now or open to questions to the public?
Whatever your preference is. If you'd like to open the hearing, you can, or if you'd like to ask questions of me first, you certainly can do that as well.
Let's hear from the public first. That way, if there's any questions that we need to address from there, is that fine with council? Okay, so we need a motion to go into public hearing, please.
Motion.
We have a motion by Member Onstead. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are in public hearing. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak on behalf of the project? Seeing no one, Mr. Gatzo, come on up. So we need you to come up again and,
Neil Gapso, 5481 East Viking Boulevard. I was at the earlier meeting where the discussion about trails and sidewalks was discussed. As I said earlier, I lived on that street with sidewalks in front of my house since 1978, and I've never seen a traffic tie-up on the sidewalk from all of the senior citizens that walk back and forth in those buildings. Some of them use the little motorized scooters. There's one gentleman who operates a wheelchair, and he prefers oftentimes to ride on the street versus being on the sidewalk. The sidewalk in front of my house is in perfect condition. I would not take anything. I know there are stretches of the sidewalk that, in order to meet raising the roads and lowering the roads, probably would need to be replaced, but I think the sidewalk replacement is down for like $100,000. I don't know that it needs to go to 5 feet to just be new sidewalk, because I think on both sides of the road, as far as it's located now, there might be some replacement in a few places, but I think the sidewalk condition is very good. So I'm just saying that might be something to consider. Again, thank you.
okay, thank you. Mr. Sykes?
Yeah. You want me to come over there?
Please.
You would.
Sorry.
I'm Gary Sykes, 5710 East Viking Boulevard. What I wanted to comment on was some things that we talked about in the July meeting. I wanted to see if they were still in the works as traffic feedback signs. We put a lot of them on Good View, and we put a few on the Pioneer Trail out there. And I think that they do a lot of good. I believe that we need those up the street as well. And the other one was crosswalks. What we're going to do is crosswalks. In several areas, we talked about putting more crosswalks in, so it's, yeah, you want me to talk about it?
Is that better? They're having a hard time hearing Mr. Sykes in the back. Sorry, we can always re-say it too, so.
We need more crosswalks.
Okay.
We're going to do that, and then, of course, the traffic feedback signs would be important. We have a terrible issue with speeding on that street, and I've heard it from others. I thought it was just me, but as I'm listening in this meeting here, I'm hearing more and more people talk about the speeding issue on the road. I've talked to several police officers about it. They tell me that it's all in my head. I'm seeing things, and I might, the trailer feedback trailer that we put out there, the speed trailer, it shows all the time that people are speeding. In fact, people like to see how high they can raise the numbers on that street or something. So those are some things that with that street being repaired, if we all want it repaired, so those are some of the things that are gonna happen. We're gonna have speed pickup out there. We don't have no more speed bumps after this is over with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just to summarize for everybody that did not hear, Mr. Sykes was questioning about crosswalks, traffic feedback signs, and speeding. So we'll be able to address that here in a few minutes. Is there anybody else who would like to, please come on up?
My name is Tom Perry. I live on Freeport Court and Viking Boulevard, 26752. I am number 17 on your map, Mark, Mr. Erickson. If I remember right, I was assessed when we did Freeport Court. And my understanding was I would not be assessed on this one. So might as well take care of it now rather than at the hearing, if that's the case.
Okay. Can you address that, Mr. Erickson? Or
Yeah,
do we-
so you're assessed where your driveway access is, and so you might be on the assessment roll. It might be a 0 assessment. I can certainly verify that, but I'll certainly.
I had money there.
Okay. We'll make sure that, but that is something that we only assess based on where your driveway access is. So
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All All right, seeing there is nobody else, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion to close by Member Luker. Do we have a second? Second by Member Onstead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are closed. Questions from council. So I'd like to be the first one to address Mr. Erickson, the $100,000 for the sidewalks. It's my understanding, and also the goal of this council, is ADA compliant, correct? And so the sidewalks are not ADA compliant.
Yeah, we will do a little bit more vetting on that, certainly as we get into final design. Again, at this level, we try to make sure we're looking at things and estimating on a high side. But we do, as we get into final design, if we can not replace something and it's in good condition, we never would do that. We want to make sure that we're utilizing the city's limited resources as wisely as we can. And so we'll evaluate that. ADA is vital, right? That's a requirement that we have to meet that. And so that will be fully evaluated. We are changing the roadway grade in a lot of areas, right? And so that may impact some of the sidewalk. There's storm sewer replacement that, depending on the proximity of the sidewalk with regard to where that storm sewer replacement is, that might chew up and remove some. And so it's, when you look at it inside, just, the condition and it's how long it's lasted, I mean, it might very well be in good condition now, but when we look at it with the ability to construct and the ability to have room for the contractors to work and things of that nature, sometimes that is counterintuitive and makes it more expensive to work around something. And so we'll look at that really with a big picture view and try to make sure we understand what's the best direction to move forward with this project.
Okay, and then do you need an answer from council tonight regarding the paved sidewalk study on that side? Or is that something you want to bring to the next meeting?
I think as we get into our design, I'd like to, if council's comfortable with me spending a little bit of time trying to vet that and see what we could do to make that fit, whether it's an on-street type option that we could discuss and have a wider shoulder, for instance, something of that nature, which I think is probably not the preferred option, but come back with a little bit more information. I didn't want to spend a lot of time without getting direction from council to do that. We looked at it at a high level, but as we get into the final design, if you're inclined to move forward with that this evening, we can spend a little bit of time to try to get and quantify that a little bit better.
Okay, so I'll let each council, as they ask their questions, let them say what they feel on that. For me, I'm very strongly in favor of walkability and access for everybody to get to downtown or where they need to get to. So I'm a yes for you to study a little bit more. That's my opinion.
Okay.
We will start with Member Yeager with any questions.
Regarding the high price to extend the sidewalk into the reclamation area, when you do your study, would you be able to also look at a workaround or an alternate solution for that?
Yes.
And be creative?
We'll look at that. Yeah, I mentioned, whether it's on-street or off-street, and so we'll look at a number of different alternatives and just find a couple of different things to present to city council
Okay.
on what our findings are.
That's all I had.
All right, Member Onstead.
I have no questions.
Member Luker.
I have no questions either.
All right, and do you have a preference on Mr. Erickson looking at the sidewalks?
Yes,
And-
please.
Yes, okay, so that's a yes from Member Luker, Member Onstead?
I would agree. Anything, any cost savings measures, I think are well to look at.
Okay. And then there was a couple other questions that I had jotted down. One, crosswalks, driver feedback signs. We'll certainly look into all those options. We haven't gone into great depth. It's a feasibility study, really high level. And so we'll come back with more details on a number of different things that we might want to consider with this project. But those are on our notes from our July meeting, as Mr. Sykes had mentioned. Those have not been forgotten, and so those will be something that we incorporate into this project as well.
Okay, and my understanding, we do have that letter in to Congressman Stauber regarding the EDA grant onto that and, or federal grant onto that, so.
We're pulling out all the stops. We're doing our
We are.
best, for sure, yeah. Yeah.
We definitely are, so, awesome. All right, so seeing no further questions, we do need to, are we good?
Mayor, just for the record, I know Mr. Terry had a question regarding
Oh,
his
yeah,
assessment.
sorry, Mr. Terry.
I was able to look up the assessment roll and the feasibility study, and it is a zero. It is not, it is at a zero rate right now. So, just for clarification.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Rob.
All right, so with that, we need a motion to approve Resolution 22-01-11, a resolution ordering the project and authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications for the 2022 East Viking Boulevard Improvement Project. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. Mayor Iverson will make that second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Consent agenda, item number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on the consent agenda. I do wish to pull number 6, and I do wish to pull number 7. Any other items from the consent agenda? If not, we need a motion to approve 3, 4, and 5.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 7, Mr. Erickson, I just want to clarify that this says this is the final, but we do have some issues or some things that we have stated that needs to be fixed on that project, correct? Am I thinking the right project?
So there, this is the 2020 project, so this is
Oh,
on the
okay.
west side
This
of the
is-
freeway.
yes, okay.
And so some of these projects tend to drag on when we're waiting for all the contract closeout documentation. And there were some items, punch list items that did carry into this year that,
Yeah.
but I think you're probably thinking the 2021 project, and it would be normal to think that because this
Right.
project has lingered a little bit, but
Yep.
that project has been completed and punch list items are completed. It would now go into that 2-year warranty period, but the
Okay.
2021 project will be final sometime next year.
Fabulous, and that's a beautiful project over there, so.
It turned out very nice,
It
yeah.
turned out really nice. So, okay, so that answers that question. And then, Chief Bauer, the resignation of Anthony Starr from the Wyoming Fire Department. I just want to say this, if you can pass it along to him. We appreciate his service. We appreciate his volunteer time as well. And just let him know that we wish him well and we thank him for what he has done. So.
Absolutely, will do, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we need a motion, Mayor Iverson will make that, to approve number 6 and number 7 on the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstead, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. We'll move on to acknowledgement of reports, officer boards, commissions, and department heads. Number 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Does anybody wish to pull a report for
I'd
further
like to.
discussion?
I'd like to pull 12.
We'll pull number 12, which is the Public Works Superintendent, Mr. Almgeld. We'll just start with that. So, Mr. Almgeld, let's start with Member Onsted's question first, and then from there.
It's not so much a question as a comment. There is a safety sign, speed limit sign, that was noticed on Kettle River that was down. And I made a call into Rob, and within 24 hours, that sign was backed up. And I just really appreciate it. That's a very dangerous spot where cars will do over the speed limit. And missing that sign was a huge safety concern. Also, the pole that was sticking up out of the ground could have been dangerous to anyone on a snowmobile on that side of the road. It could have impaled the bottom of a snowmobile and thrown somebody off, possibly into traffic. And I'd like to say thank you, and for Mr. Travis, sending me a note personally to say that it had been completed. Wonderful job.
But thank you, I'll let him know.
Perfect, thank you. We'll move on to new business, which is number 13 on the agenda. To consider a request to apply for the Minnesota DNR Emerald Ash Borer Grant. And I believe, Mr. Sachs, this will be the first time you'll be presenting in front of council.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, council members, thank you. So the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources is currently accepting grant applications to assist communities in managing ash trees that have emerald ash borer, which is a very infectious disease that spreads very easily. So currently the DNR has $2.4 million of available funds to help communities get rid of this disease on public lands and tribal lands. There is no minimum dollar amount for this grant, but the maximum amount that will be funded is up to $150,000 per community. And so the Parks Advisory Committee looked at this. They're meeting on January 10th, and they have recommended that staff apply for this grant, so that's why we're here tonight in front of council. So according to a tree inventory done by city staff this past summer and fall, it was determined that approximately 689 city-owned ash trees, the city has 689 ash trees, and of those 689, 60 trees potentially have EAB, and they're in very poor condition. So staff would use this grant money to work with a consultant to cut down these infected trees, remove the stumps, and then plant new diverse populations on the city right-of-way and public land. Along with that grant, the city would work with the tree board to just start develop this emerald ash borer plan once that grant cycle is over, to continue monitoring for the EAB to make sure it doesn't spread any further. The plan would also engage the public to identify any infected trees in their own property, educate them on how to best take care of that, but then ultimately it's up to that homeowner to take care of the infected tree. Then we're looking at the fiscal side of things. So if the city was awarded $150,000, the maximum amount of the grant, it would be spread over 3 years. So years 1, 2, and 3, we would receive about $50,000 annually. But unfortunately, that won't quite cover all of the costs needed to do this removal. So the first year, the city would spend $7,000 of existing funds from the tree fund, and then the second and third years, they would utilize $5,000 from that tree fund. Then once the grant cycle ends, staff would approximately estimate about $2,000 a year to continue to monitor the EAB and remove the trees. So so what we're asking is for the city council to authorize staff to apply for this Minnesota DNR Emerald Ash Borer grant. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. I have no questions. Member Onstad?
I have no questions.
Member Yeager?
What happens if you don't get the grant?
Then we'll have to explore other options. Our tree fund has about $31,000 in it, so that's not enough to cover a lot of the removal. We can look at other grant options. That's something we'd work with our public works staff to figure out, but EAB is a very serious infectious disease, and it does need to be maintained and taken care of.
Okay, and if a homeowner's ash tree was found to be infected, would the city then require the homeowner to remove the tree at the homeowner's expense?
I believe we can't require that, but we can educate them on the consequences of not removing it. If it does spread onto city-owned public land, then we would have to take action, but we can't force the homeowner. But we can do our best to educate them, explore what their options are to get it removed. But yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and Member Luger?
I have no questions.
All right, thank you. We do need a motion to approve the request for the grant for the Minnesota DNR Emerald Ash Borer grant. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Luger. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So approved. Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
Yep. Thank you.
Number 14 on our agenda, to consider Resolution 22-01-14, a resolution approving the purchase of a 2022 STEP SPHOJ 3.0 asphalt trailer in the amount of $51,804 from the STEP Manufacturing. Mr. Almgeld, you'll be taking this?
Yes, Mayor, thank you, and council members. We have a 30-year-old asphalt trailer that was purchased, used from another government agency way back. And the city trailer has been modified and re-welded throughout the years. Excuse me. On 9/23, the asphalt trailer was involved in a hit and run in St. Paul, and one of our employees was at the asphalt plant. So we put in a claim along with a police report, and we submitted that to our insurance, and they totaled out our trailer at $7,800, but we have a $1,000 deductible. And we already have received a check, and that was placed in the CIP fund. So the 2022 CIP fund has $48,000 budgeted for the purchase of a new trailer. So we've obtained a Minnesota state bid from STEP in North Branch, Minnesota. The proposed asphalt trailer, a STEP model SPHOJ 3.0, is the same brand and similar to our current unit. The hot patch trailers have been around for years and have not changed very much throughout the years. The state bid price for the new unit is $51,804. We budgeted $48,000 in the CIP as we're expecting to trade in our old unit. The purchase price less the insurance claim has a net amount of $45,004. The new asphalt trailer has a 120-day build-out. That's why we're here right away at the beginning of the year to get it ordered. The Minnesota state bid also increased by 8% starting February 1st. And so we recommend the purchase of the step trailer from STEP for $51,804.
Thank you, Mr. Elmjeld. Is there a longevity to these when they aren't hit and ran on?
Yeah, they're at least a 20-year unit, because they're gas, and it's just a steel box basically on wheels. But there's some electronic controlling for the burners and stuff.
Okay, and how many times a year would you say we use that in this? I'm assuming it's just summer.
Just summer, but in Wyoming, at least 90 days out of the summer. I mean, we do a lot of pothole patching.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council. We'll start with Member Lugar.
I don't believe I have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Member Yeager.
Were we able to get any kind of insurance settlement from the individual who hit the asphalt trailer?
No, the person that hit the asphalt trailer actually got out of the vehicle, said he has a warrant and that he has no insurance, and asked our employee to just forget about it. And when our employee said, no, call the police, they ran with the car.
Phew. That's all I had.
Can we get asphalt anywhere else besides St. Paul then? Is there?
Oh, yes, but this trailer, actually, we only have to make one trip a day because it holds 4 tons.
Okay,
It's a little bit larger.
all right, thank you. And Member Onstead.
How big was our old one?
Through our 3 tons, so you take you usually put down about 5 ton a day but now with our new program, we do the first half so we can get other maintenance done in the second half.
All right, any other questions? There are no others. We need a motion to approve Resolution 22-01114, a resolution approving the purchase of a 2022 STEP asphalt trailer in the amount of $51,804 from STEP Manufacturing. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Lugar. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 15, to consider the hiring of Brandon Rice for the maintenance worker 1 with the starting wage of step 1, $25.04 an hour, with a tentative start date of February 9th, 2022. Mr. Umtel, will you be taking this one as well?
Yes, Madam Mayor and council members. We had 11 applicants apply for the maintenance worker 1 position. We did first and second rounds, and our top candidate was Brandon Rice. He is currently working for the city of Fridley Public Works. Brandon worked in the street department there. Previous employers, he was at St. Joseph Hospital for 3 years, I believe, in the city of Deerwood, Minnesota. So based on his qualifications, his wage history and work experience, staff is recommending starting Brandon at step 1, $25.04 an hour with a 6-month probation period per the union contract.
Okay, thank you. I do like the fact that he has asphalt patching and paving experience. So, Member Yeager?
With Mr. Rydeen's resignation, does that mean you're down 2 people now?
That is correct.
Okay, and will Mr. Rice receive training in sewer, or are you going to just keep him on streets?
He will be getting trained in water and sewer during the winter months, like he'll start there.
He'll start on streets, but he'll be cross-trained.
Yeah, we'll
Also
start him
do-
in the winter months. We don't do a lot of street maintenance except plowing. So we'll put him in the street and or water and sewer, because he'll be on call approximately 10 weeks after he starts.
Okay, that's all I had.
All right, Member Onstead?
No questions.
Member Lugar?
No questions.
All right, we need a motion to approve the hiring of Brandon Rice for the maintenance worker 1 with a starting wage of step 1, $25.04 an hour, with a tentative start date of February 9th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Member Lugar. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Member Onstead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. And last on our agenda, to consider a council work session on February 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Mr. Linwood or Mr. Sachs?
I can take that, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, this is an annual exercise that we go through initiatives and goals for the council for the current work year. Usually, we allow the boards and commissions to complete their goals, and that way the council has a chance to review those but prior to that work session. So we're simply, as an annual exercise, asking if the council would be willing to hold a work session on that Wednesday, February 9th at 6 p.m.
Great. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, then we need to approve that work session on February 9th, 2022. I will make the first motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll see you on February 9th.
Thank
All
you.
right, with that, council reports, Member Yeager.
I attended the franchise fee open house and the East Viking neighborhood meeting, and thank you all for coming, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Member Luger.
I also attended the franchise fees public meeting, the neighborhood meeting for East Viking. I also attended the Park Advisory Commission meeting on the 10th and the Swenson Park ribbon cutting this last weekend. And just being able to see it and see how happy the kids were skating around and flying into boards and things like that. I really appreciate the work that went into planning it, installing it, and securing the DNR grant for it. And I'm looking forward to continuing the work of increasing ADA compliant facilities and infrastructure. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Onstad.
I attended the public hearing. I can't remember what it was. On the, I'm drawing a blank right now. Franchise fees, that's what it was. I attended the public meeting on the franchise fees last week. I also attended the open house for the ice rink. And I was thinking about that because I'd been an ice rink attendant for 10 years in my early days, and that's the nicest rink I've ever been at. It is, those boards are something else. Very impressive, the lighting is great. It is just a nice park.
Nice park.
So, yeah, I got distracted thinking about how cool that park is.
It is a very nice park, so, awesome, thank you very much. I attended all of those meetings, including the Park Advisory Commission as well. The ribbon cutting, I will say, was a blast. It was short, it was cold, but it was a lot of fun. Happy to see the kids who had been out there last year compared to what it is like this year and say how much they enjoyed it. I, too, am looking forward to continuing our ADA upgrades. I know tonight we did have a resident that was in a wheelchair and did have, getting into our building was a little bit more of an issue. So making sure that we get those done. Let's see, with that, I think we're all good. We do need a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn by Member Luker. Do we have a second? Second by Mayor Everson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?